Hello, everybody. As a backdrop to our Dvar Torah this week, I highly recommend that you look at all of the psukim that deal with the interaction between the viceroy of Egypt, Yosef, at that point yet unbeknown to his brothers as a brother, and the other sons of Yaakov, of course, except for Binyamin. And you will notice there that the difficulty that the brothers had was not necessarily in the perceived cruelty of Yosef per se, but rather the fact that the viceroy of Egypt seemed to be acting in a very unstable manner. Sometimes he seemed to deal with them in quite the kindly manner, and at other times he seemed to be quite harsh and unforgiving. So, for example, after he had inquired of the brothers regarding their family, and he found out that there was another brother, of course, Binyamin, who was yet at home in Canaan with their father Yaakov, Yosef tells them, "You're basically lying to me. It's a bubba maisa. You're spies. I don't believe you. And in fact, what I'm going to do is imprison the whole lot of you, except for one of you who will go back and bring me this so-called younger brother who's back in Canaan." And he then proceeds to incarcerate the brothers, all of them, for 3 days. And then we read of the following. Vayomer Alehem Yosef Bayom HaShlishi. On the third day of their incarceration, he says to them, Zos asu vichyu. You guys want to live? You want to survive this? Here's what you're going to have to do. Esa Elohim ani yareh. I am a God-fearing person. And then he goes on to say, if you're really telling me the truth, I'm going to send all of you back, except for one of you who will turn out to be Shimon, who will remain incarcerated, and the rest of you go back to Canaan and fetch this so-called younger brother of you. So this is another example where originally he was very harsh. He's imprisoning all of them in Egypt until one is sent back to Canaan to bring back Binyamin. And now all of a sudden he's sending everybody back and imprisoning only one until Binyamin is brought back before the viceroy. But in the pasuk that I just cited, the Kedushas Levi, Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, raises two fundamental questions. First of all, if Yosef wants to schwitz and brag that he's a God-fearing person, it should have said, Esa Elokim ani yareh, I am God-fearing, and then proceed with his instructions. Zot asu v'chyu, this is what you should do so that you will live and then continue. But what does Yosef do? He says, okay, here's what you got to do in order to live. Oh, I'm a God-fearing person. And then he lays out the plan of what they are to do. And when he finishes laying out the plan, in the next pasuk it says at the very end, Vaya'asu chen. And in fact, that's what they did. What do you mean that's what they did? They're still standing before Yosef. Nobody went back to Canaan. Nobody brought Binyamin back to Yosef. How can it state in past tense, as if it already was done, that the brothers fulfilled the words of the viceroy? And so the Kedushas Levi offers the following suggestion. Sometimes a person can perceive that another acts towards him in a manner that is perhaps perceivable as hurtful, that is unfavorable, that's difficult. And of course, a person would take this in a very bad light. However, if the person understood that the other individual is acting with proper motivation for a good reason and a good cause, he will receive the treatment in a very different manner. And therefore, what Yosef wants to do is, before laying out the plan, he wants to say to them, the first thing you need to do for your own welfare is to believe that my motivations are pure and good, because like you, I am a God-fearing person, and I don't wish to ultimately harm you. All of this, you may not see it right now, how, but all of this is for your own good. That's the first thing you need to know, and here's the plan. And then he tells them what he's going to do and what the rest of them have to do and bring Binyamin back to the viceroy. And so the pasuk concludes, Vaya'asu chen. The brothers took Yosef at his word and were willing to accept the idea that Yosef's motivations are proper and therefore in a positive light. They set forth on their journey in order to fulfill the command of the viceroy. And perhaps that is why two of the brothers, Reuven in his way, Yehuda in his way, when they get back to Canaan, are so forceful in arguing with their father Yaakov to let Binyamin go, because they understood that this would eventually accrue for their benefit. And in fact, it did. I think that there is a lesson here for all of us. We, of course, are not bochein klayot v'lev to know whether the next one speaks truthfully about his good intentions or not. But I think if all of us would be more imbued with being assumptive of good intentions of other people, perhaps being cautious, but at the same time being dan l'chaf zechut, and until proven otherwise, be prepared to act on the assumption that the other means well, and that perhaps if they said something that might be hurtful, they didn't mean it in a negative way. They meant it in a positive way, or at least in a parva way. They didn't mean to do harm. I think it would stand for the betterment of everyone. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Chanukah Sameach.